I pastor and curate with Rhythms of Grace, which is a small congregation of 70 or 80 people out of a pool twice that. One of 3 congregations that are part of a church called the Upper Room. And we have 8:30 to 9:30 on a Sunday morning. I call it slow church rather than reflective or meditative, which have sort of other connotations with people. So we don't sing particularly, we don't have any band, live music, a lot of recorded music, a lot of video, quite liturgical in the sense of pattern and responsive readings and things like that. Children are in the whole time, people can draw and write stuff during the service, the tables are out amongst the congregation, and we have communion every week. And all of those things are a little unusual in New Zealand, but that's just the way it is. What's mostly unusual about this there is many or more men than women coming. And universally the men say, when I ask them, it's because we don't sing. Universally. There's never been any other significant response. And women who say, we thank me for Rhythms of Grace because they haven't been able to get their husband to come to church for 20 or 30 years, but he comes with them now and he loves coming and they can't keep him away. They say, why? Oh, because we don't sing much. So that's fascinating. Anyway, that's Rhythms of Grace. A gorgeous community, just wonderful people. All sorts of people. So part of what I do and what we do as a community is be involved in Festival 1, which is a large by New Zealand scale, or the only, not large actually, it's only about 6,000 people, but it's the only Christian arts music festival in New Zealand now. So I curate space at that. So I have a very large space, huge space actually, probably 80 yards by 70 yards or so, and about 15 yards, 20 yards high, and black, all black walls, everything, and windowless. It's the best venue on the site because if it rains you don't get wet, if the wind blows you don't get blown around, and you can lie on the floor if it's a bit cold. So I curate what I call a precinct, which is kind of a reflective space, but it has to fulfill more obligations than it can really. And that is, I have to house the mission booths, up to 20 mission agents, and I provide art and craft kinds of activities for all ages, ways to involve all ages in it. And then where my heart is in the kind of stations-based, art installation-based opportunities for people to engage with God in some kind of way. So each year I curate a different kind of setup for that. So one year it was I built the Wilderness Precinct, so we trucked in 40 tonnes of sand and 30,000 litres of water and a whole lot of other stuff. I made a big desert through the place, and the mission agencies were around the outside, and we had 700 coffee sacks that made these really high entrances into the place so you couldn't see what you're getting into until you came in, and then this big waterfall. So the whole project nearly killed us, but it was there for 3 or 4 days and people loved it, and it was just a fabulous space, probably one of the best spaces I've done, certainly the most expensive one. So that brought people past the mission booth, so the mission agencies were delighted. So this just in January, just passed, a slightly different venue, not nearly as good, no carpet and everything like that. But anyway, still the same space big. So I'm curating a number of stations, and there are places that people can go do them. So a lot of activities for people to be involved in. A Bible study built out of sheets of plywood that had every page of the Bible on 16 sides of plywood, and a little low door you can go inside, and torches, magnifying glasses, and felt pens. So you can go in and scribble on your favourite text or whatever, or write what you wanted there. It's inspired by Neil Lambert in London. So I just called it a Bible study, and so people, and little steps, people stand on up the scriptures there. And my story from that was, my favourite story from that is that 3 young women in their 20s who discovered the Song of Solomon. And it's a Pentecostal church background from what they said. Never seen this in the scripture before. And we're just so excited, and we're going to, well, they were social media to all their friends about what they discovered about the Bible. So that kind of thing, and building a house structure out of slats, timber that people painted and wrote on first. and just building them in a haphazard bird's nest kind of way. Yeah, stuff like that. And providing a smell sent through this old concrete warehouse. Usually has horses in it for their agricultural shows, with 6 bread makers just going all day, just when you walk past them, creating bread making smell, and then using that bread on the communion table, stuff like that. So continuous communion for people. But what turned out to be the highlight of it, for me and for everyone else, was what I called a T and B ceremony. So TEA and BE, about being. I'm very much about, every week I'll talk to the congregation about being rather than doing. Telling you know, it doesn't matter, God doesn't care what you do. God cares about who you are in the relationship, about your being. So, work on that before you go out and figure out what God wants you to do. So, built a long, narrow table, just 2 feet wide, that would seat, and some benches that would seat 7 people on each side. And then around this, a low cut bamboo fence, just to mark it off from the rest of the space a bit more, and a roof, a canopy out over it. So this was the T and B ceremony, and 45-minute sessions starting on the hour through the day. So it gave us a bit of a turnaround time. So I just wanted to encourage. I've been reading Johann Hari's book, Lost Connection. I think it's a really important book to me. He's an American journalist who would say that all of our increase in depression, anxiety, suicide can be laid firmly and clearly at the feet of our loss of connection with people, with creation, with meaningful work, with our past, and all of those kinds of things. And he lists 7 lost connections, and I reckon the church could take responsibility for restoring at least 5 of them. So, but we're not good at it, even the lost connection with other people. So that's what this was about. And I just work intuitively, so I backfill the reason for doing everything after I've done it. And I thought this was not going to work. I like tea, and I talked to the director and other leaders in the festival, and they would say, "Oh, you're going to do a tea ceremony, are you?" And no one was really enthusiastic about it. So I woke up the week before, just thinking, this is really dumb. No one is going to come to this. I've spent a lot of the budget on this. So up the road half an hour is New Zealand's only commercial tea estate called Zilong, Z-E-A Long. 1.2 million tea bushes there. So I thought that's a really nice storied connection with them. So I selected 6 of their teas, opened an account with them, and they provided me with the teaware to use, and tea at wholesale prices. It's expensive tea, but it's real tea. So the arrangement was that on this table there was a placemat, 2, we would call them A3 page size, 2 legal pad sort of size, a double legal pad size piece of paper that had a list of the 6 teas that I was offering, that I'd chosen, 6 that I liked. So I thought I'm going to be drinking the leftovers from here. I'll have stuff that I like. Yeah. And then some conversation starters, 4 or 5 questions like, what do you know about your name? What's the most sacred thing that you own? Stuff that anyone can answer without being Christian or Christian. And then a pencil on there for writing your name on it and selecting which tea you want. And a little bit about Zilong and a place to journal if you wanted to on there. And then a wooden block that had talk on one side and B on the other side that everyone had. And these were laid out very straight, string lines straight, to get them looking very neat and tidy, very minimalist, very Zen-like. And the tea company, who are not Christians, were just delighted with it. They were very pleased with what we'd done, wondering who this person was who'd come to this strange idea. So you could turn this tea talk and be thing over. If you wanted to, we're happy to talk to those around you. You put the talk up, and if you didn't want to talk, you put the be up. People would respect that. So on the hour, the other backup thing is you had to register for it. So I wanted to know how many people were coming, because I said I didn't know if anyone would. So we had 23 sessions listed on the board with 14 or 15 slots on each. You were supposed to not register with more than 3 others at any one time, just to break it down a bit. We didn't police that. And young children were asked not to be there because of the boiling water that was floating around. So by the end of the first day of the festival, 1/3 of the way in, the entire wall was fully taken. Every slot was taken, and we had people turning up to queue up in case someone didn't turn up at their session, which was really interesting. So we did 23 sessions, about 300 people. I trained up some crew from my church who were there to be T&B crew. We had aprons that have T&B and the logo, in the US design logo for me. And she also cut me 12 teapot lights, so regular ceramic teapots, all different shapes and sizes, that she cut the bottom off and put drilled holes and put fittings in, and I filled them up with light bulbs and fittings and stuff like that. So we hung them above it as well. So the space looked nice. You would come in on the hour, and then tea crew would give you a 10-minute or so introduction to tea, the history of tea, the Japanese church pushed underground using the Japanese tea ceremony as their communion, all those kind of connections. History of tea, what slurping tea is all about, and then going through the description of these 6 teas. It's pretentious. It's like describing an art exhibition. There's all these notes of this, or a glass of wine. All these notes you're supposed to. No one knows anything about it. And talking about materiality. Having people smell the tea first, then afterwards being able to look at how the tea leaves have changed as they've steeped and stuff like that. And then they would choose their tea, and a label would go on that saying what tea it was. Because they were in Gaiwan, that have a filter that you can take out of them, it meant that if someone else wanted to try your tea, you could just swap them around without bringing out the same teacup. And that worked really well. So you only ever got your teacup refilled, your Gaiwan filled and filled and filled. It wasn't as if you got a different tea every time. So the tea crew would do that, pour the water in, and then set people going. And then 45 minutes, at the end of the 45-minute session, we would try to stop people from talking, and it was very difficult. And then we took all the tea leaves and stuff that was left over and just kept filling it up in a tall glass vial, and became sort of a living artwork symbol of the conversations that we'd had around this table. And the conversations were just incredible. We had people in tears, people who discovered someone who lived in the same obscure part of the world that they had when they were born. People just really excited. And then we took the placemats as well, if you didn't want to take yours with you, and made a big mural out of those around the wall so you could read them and stuff like that. I bound them into a book at home that I have now. And the comments are just very humbling, the kind of experience, the God experiences that people had, let alone the sort of the connections and other things that people made for just having a cup of tea, around the thing. So since then, the tea crew came back and were really excited about doing more of them. One of the women wants to commercialise it, of course. Somebody wants to do that. So we did a church, 80 people at Rims of Grace one Sunday morning, did a T&B as the service, so bookended it with the regular call to worship, prelude, all that kind of stuff, and same outro kind of stuff of benediction and whatever. And then the conversation around the table was guided with different questions. We were thinking about changing venue then, so there were questions about how would you feel about changing venue, and a bigger journals block on this one, so people wrote there what they thought about the move, and we collected those and collated the responses. To that, I was asked to do an evening service for a reflective group at an Anglican church, and I said, can I bring the T&B? So they wanted me to talk about silence and other spiritual practices, I think. I can't remember exactly what it was. So I put that in a T&B context for 28 people, so just did my normal introduction to the service, a normal outro bit, and in the middle we had the T&B ceremony. And I learned a lot from that, because they always have supper and they wanted to bring their cake and biscuits and things to the table, and I said, no, this is just about the tea, it's not actually anything else. And I've done some others, and we're going to do our All Saints All Souls service around the T&B on November the 3rd, so that'll be exactly the same. It'll be bookended with the service elements. In the middle will be this big block of talking together with people. But the questions will be about people who have been significant in your life, and deaths that you've experienced in your family or whatever in the last year or two. So the questions will just frame the conversation in that direction. Yeah, that's it really.